Look, I'm not gonna lie. It's real ugly out there.
I think what our friend Clayton said honestly sums up Gears 5 pretty well. Let me again state that while it might not seem like it, I really don't make videos being negative just for the sake of being negative, or else you'd see me covering every bad thing that a publisher or developer does across all of gaming. Instead, I make these videos because Gears of War is one of those franchises that was such a large part of my childhood. This franchise truly is one of the best and most unique experiences in all of gaming. And it really does sadden me that nowadays the Gears franchise seemingly has so little name recognition. The original Gears trilogy was so good that those games really were system sellers. And Gears 4 was an okay attempt to revive the series. But Gears 5 needed to be a home run on day one, to try and honestly bring excitement back to this dying franchise. And even though the game got stellar reviews from critics, and somehow even YouTubers think it's the single greatest game to touch an Xbox, which I highly disagree with, it still wasn't enough to keep this game relevant. If you look at the Xbox's top played games right now, the game is somewhere around 15th place, which is pretty low for a game that's only a month old, and also included in Xbox Game Pass. If this game is truly as great as reviewers and defenders claim it is, then the game should still be in the top 10. But based on its current placement on Xbox, unless something drastic happens to reignite interest in the game, then Gears 5 is as good as dead. Now I've already done a video on my overall thoughts on Gears 5, along with a follow-up one dedicated to just discussing the microtransactions. So for today's video I want to discuss the multiplayer, and explain why this entry of Versus is not just flawed technically, but also creatively. And before we get into that, let me just say that Coalition has done a good job at addressing flashbangs in the most recent update, and the Nasher-only King of the Hill is a lot of fun. But there's still just so much work that needs to be done to make this game's Versus mode up to par with the previous games. As always, there's timestamps below in the description if you wish to jump around the conversation. But if you want to hear everything, let's start off with a vital pillar of Versus, the roster. Now I know I've talked about the Gears 5 roster extensively in my previous videos, but it still needs to be discussed here. In Gears multiplayer, picking a character is such an essential part of the experience as it allows us fans to play as multiple characters in the campaign, play as the Locust or Swarm, or find a favorite with whom we identify with or just enjoy playing as. Like I previously stated, I've always played as a Carmine in previous Gears games, and my second favorite has always been the Coal Train.
As in the Coal Train? Stay cool, baby.
Yeah, that's right.
Yet in Gears 5, I can't place either of these guys. The roster at launch is probably the worst in the entire series, as there's no Delta Squad outside of Marcus, no Carmines, and no Locust characters, even though they're brought back in Gears 4. This is a large turnoff for me and many other diehard Gears fans, and I'm sure if you ask any of us, we'd all rather have Delta Squad and the Carmines over the crossover characters from Terminator and Halo. If the Coalition had enough time to animate and generate these characters, along with their individual abilities, then there is zero excuse for Delta Squad to not be here. I've also heard awful and weak arguments defending this small roster from fans who have stated that the Coalition didn't want to overwhelm us with content, and how Gears 4 also had a weak roster at launch. Well, first off, trust me, absolutely no one is going to feel overwhelmed with a lot of good quality content. And second, it is true that Gears 4 took a while to have a great roster as well, but with both Gears 4 and Gears 5 running on the same version of Unreal Engine 4, and from the little work of coding and game engines that I had in college, I believe carrying over assets on the same engine doesn't take much effort, outside of touching up on the detail and resolution. If you try and edit a PowerPoint that's a couple versions behind, and then edit it in the newest version, it can be done pretty easily. After all, it's in the same program. And even if it does take more effort than PowerPoint, they had 3 years to do so. So in looking back at the insane level of options we had in Gears 4, to the abysmal selection we have in Gears 5, there simply is just no excuse for a roster this small. Gears 5 fanboys can try and defend it all they want, but there's just no logical reasoning for it, and I can't fathom anyone who would honestly be against having more variety and selection in playable characters, or who'd be against meaningful and cool looking rewards. And speaking of rewards, in Gears games outside of Gears 1, earning cool looking rewards has always been an important part of the experience. Here in Gears 5, most of everything you're going to unlock outside of spending money on the awful and overpriced store will be done through the Tour of Duty. Now I've already done a breakdown of how the system works in my previous videos, and chances if you're watching this video now, you probably know how this system works pretty well. So I won't go into too much detail here, but overall the system is just a battle pass in which you level up by completing various daily challenges. Most Gears fans hate the Tour of Duty, but some like it and have stated that's a great system. Now at the moment I hate the system, but I do agree it could be good in theory. That is, if some major changes happen. First, regular experience points need to count towards leveling this up. as some people have demanding jobs, families to take care of, or just don't play video games every day. And the way the system is currently set up makes it to where it's incredibly hard to complete the tour without completing the daily challenges. By making regular XP count, players can play the game how they want and still complete it, not how the game wants. Once this is done, the system of how the tour works would be fixed. But the biggest issue right now is the rewards in the tour are terrible. And I mean, there's literally not a single skin, other than maybe the last one, or Scar JD, that looks appealing or enticing in the slightest. There was a great post on Reddit that pointed out the phenomenal cosmetic options that we had later in Gears 4, with incredible character skins for a large cast, and some of the best gun cosmetics I've seen in any game. With those examples, the Coalition's artists proved they can make designs worth grinding for. Now imagine if instead of the insane amount of useless clutter, ugly character skins, and disappointing weapon skins, if we got character skins like the Blood Moon one for the Swarm, or weapon skins like the Phantom ones, or my personal favorite again, the Midnight Omen. Those are rewards that are actually enticing for us to earn, and Gears 4 already has tons of amazing cosmetics that can be used as a template. Or hell, just bring those options back. Looking at the comments from that Reddit post, it was pretty funny to see a Gears 5 fan try and defend this. Before the OP reminded him that just because Gears 5 is a different game from Gears 4, that doesn't mean the Coalition's artists get their designs levels reset to level 1. Okay, now that we've covered the visual issues, let's look into the technical ones. Gears 5's multiplayer looks amazing, and plays just as well on the surface, but when you look beneath that, then the game's technical flaws can be easily seen. Now most of the game's launch issues have been fixed, and nothing was truly as bad as when Gears of War 2 launched, with servers so broken that players could only walk around and chainsaw. But there's still a lot of work to be done. First off, the game's server issues in the EU is an actual joke, and even though the Coalition has stated that work has been done to try and fix this, it's still a long way from being fixed. I honestly feel bad for the European players, as they are constantly being put in North American lobbies with awful ping, like this guy here who had over 4,000 ping. I'm actually kind of surprised to even connect to the game at all. But server issues like this, with players being put in lobbies on other continents, need to be completely fixed ASAP. Not just improved, but fixed entirely. As players in other areas than the US pay for the game as well, and deserve the ability to play the multiplayer just like the rest of us. Moving on from the server issues is the Nasher inconsistency. Now to be fair, the Nasher always seems to have a couple issues with consistency in all the Gears games, as the range and accuracy that determines whether a shot is a one-hit kill or not seems to vary at times. But here in Gears 5, this is easily the worst in the series. It has become a massive Reddit meme to do 99% damage in one shot, while your opponent does 100% to you. The amount of times that you get 95% to 100% in this game is absurdly high, and it's probably the most rage-inducing element when you clearly get off the first accurate shot from the proper range, and your opponent doesn't die, while you get blown away from a similar or worse shot. Gears of War shotgun battles is a staple of the series, and the heart of the game's multiplayer. So if the shotguns of Gears 5 are suffering from inconsistent range, damage, and even just the reliability of actually firing or not, the heart of Gears multiplayer here is basically in ruins. Even if your Nasher seems to be consistent, and you're a US player, well, there's still a massive technical hurdle that will probably affect you, and that is the game's ranking system. I was very pleased and happy that the game launched with a ranking system, and this is a feature I strongly believe that every game should incorporate to help reduce the amount of times that matches are so heavily one-sided. The Gears 5 ranking system was working pretty well for the first couple of weeks, but then recently out of nowhere, the Coalition said they're making a change to ranked to try and bring players more in line with their real rank. Well, instead, all this change has done is basically de-rank every player that was in Diamond, Onyx, or even Master rank and put them in ranks no higher than Gold. This is obviously frustrating for the game's best players, as they could be MVP, have the best match yet, and win, yet still lose points and rank down. This mass de-ranking across the board that the Coalition has caused is not only frustrating for the good players, who lost all their hard work, but frustrating for bad players as well. Because now matches that should be full of players who are still trying to learn the maps and figure out how to aim better are having to fight against wall-bouncing gods. Okay, well I think that paints a pretty good picture of the game's technical issues. Now let's take a dive into the game's creative issues. There's an old phrase that people love to toss around from time to time, that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, that's mostly been true for Gears of War. After all, Gears of War has not only changed pretty significantly from game to game, but each entry has had their own additions and removals. That's why asking a multitude of Gears fan which game was their favorite will provide a wide variety of answers. Players seem to either gravitate towards Nasher-focused gameplay, where close-quarter brawls are the focus alongside map control, and others prefer a more balanced gameplay with stopping power and where most guns are powerful enough to keep their Nasher players at bay. However, I think with Gears 5, the Coalition has clearly chosen which side they want to cater to. As in Gears 5 the movement is slower, the maps are much smaller, the amount of cover has been reduced, more verticality has been added, the Lancer has been buffed tremendously, bullet magnetism and aim assist have been added, and the game modes are now much more focused on dying and respawning with incredible speed. Basically, Gears 5 promotes Lancer play, downplays movement, and just overall tries to make the whole game experience much more casual. Now there's nothing wrong with trying to make a game more approachable so that new players can learn the ropes, but this should be done through new player-focused game modes and not by changing the game's fundamentals. First off, aim assist and bullet magnetism is 100% in this game, and there's tons of clips and gameplay online to show and prove this. This has greatly harmed the game's experience, as it makes almost anyone a threat. While I understand this was done to help new players, and some want this to remain in the game for certain game modes and game types, this doesn't do anyone any good. Yes, it might make the new players more dangerous, and they might feel like they're doing well, but by giving players assisted aim and accuracy, they're not forced to actually improve upon their weaker elements, and therefore will never get better. So now the accuracy and skill of a player isn't as important, and instead luck seems like a huge factor in every gunfight, and that's something that should never happen in a Gears game. Moving past the assisted aim is the massive buff to Lancers. This is something that's been said in the official forums and on Reddit ever since the game came out, and another fellow content creator, GGZII'S, has actually done a great job at explaining some of this more in depth in his video, which I'll link below.
It becomes an issue. We've reached a point in Gears of War 5 where the Lancer is incredibly strong. I think we can all agree. It has borderline hit scan, you can't really miss with it, it's very easy to fire and control, there's very little recoil, you can kill somebody across the map and deal full damage, there's no fall off damage, which makes it an incredibly strong, not only killing weapon at close due to its stopping power and its rate of fire and its accuracy, but also an incredible support weapon that you can seemingly tap anybody across the map and get assists, eliminations, kills, downs, with very little effort.
But basically the gist of the issue is that the Lancers are now so powerful that a single person can use only that gun and hold down an area all on his own. In Gears 1, for the Lancer to be effective, it had to be used by an entire team, and it was mostly a support weapon for a very specific range. But now in Gears 5, it's basically a power weapon all on its own, and pretty visceral at most ranges. While Gears 1 had the strongest Lancer in terms of time to kill, it never felt like it due to a plethora of reasons that GGZII'S explains pretty well.
The Lancer in Gears of War 1 has the fastest time to down somebody out of every Lancer in Gears of War 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. However, you never fully got to utilise that time to down due to things like quicker rate of movement on players, higher strafe speed, no stopping power, maps with better cover / less high elevation spots for crossing, and it meant that the Lancer was a pure support weapon, and once you got out of that support range, it was time to shotgun battle.
As you can tell from what he said, map design is also another major issue. Besides the game only having a handful of maps at launch, with some Gears 4 launch maps being exclusive to custom games for some odd reason, the big issue here with the maps is the actual design and layout. They're so small, with little to no cover, and such drastic elevation variance that the game feels like Call of Duty, in terms of its pace and less like Gears of War. In fact, that's a good way to describe this new direction for the franchise. Gone are the days of long drawn out hallway fights with obvious battle lines, and where being a man down made the game much harder. And instead we now have a game that promotes camping and punishes pushing or playing aggressively, and if you do, well then it's just a constant stream of mindlessly dying, killing, and respawning without much thought or skill. Gears multiplayer used to be a game with an insane skill gap. We had to continuously practice and learn moves and techniques to bring into multiplayer. And now it's a game that's trying to remove that skill gap and instead make this game a game for everyone. This is evident from the game's awful new implementation of ranked play, faster respawn time, smaller maps, addition of Fortnite-style emotes and cosmetics, and the inclusion of the controversial aim assist. Whether you love or hate Gears 5, know that I truly do make these videos out of love, and while I really don't like Gears 5, that doesn't mean I don't like the franchise anymore. The Gears of War franchise really does deserve to be praised to the same likes that God of War and Uncharted constantly are. But if the Coalition keeps deviating the series away from what the fans want, releasing a product of so little content that people lose interest in just a week or two, and try to monetize their OnlyFans to an extreme degree, then this game and franchise will be buried forever. And you can keep defending it, but the player data speaks for itself. Gears 5 multiplayer is some of the worst in the series, and I truly hope the Coalition steps off their high horse and realizes that if they don't address the sea of issues now, there might not be a Gears 6. Well, that wraps up this video on the awful state of Gears 5 multiplayer. So let me know what you think of the current state of Gears 5 in the comments, and if you like or dislike where it's at right now. If you'd like to contact me about anything Gears related or otherwise, as well as stay up to date on my videos, then go look on my Twitter account link below. If you want awesome perks such as behind the scenes of my videos, involvement in the creation progress, mentions in the credits such as seen here, and much more, then go check out my Patreon below and find a tier that fits you best. With that said, let's chat down in the comments, and if you like this video and you want to see more like it, be sure to leave a like, share the video, and hit that subscribe button. And I'll see you all on the next Shepherd Gaming video. Keyless Ally.